Going on? Welcome back to the Go Getters Coaching Podcast. It's your boy, Dr. Andy Feta Chan. Just call me Andy. It's kind of awkward to be called Doctor. And I'm here with my co-hosts.
What's up, guys? Peter. But yeah, we got a super quick, actionable episode for you guys. We're gonna be chatting all about what to look for whenever you're seeking out a sublease inside a gym. I think this is a really great entry point for people that are looking to get started with their cash practice. It gives you a lot of really great resources to start out with when you're first starting out. And then it also gives you like a pretty low overhead without risking too much. So super excited to kind of, dive into some tactical stuff for you guys. So let's go ahead. Let's hit it off, man. Andy, like, what are some things that people should look for whenever they're looking to, sublease inside a gym? Just because there's probably so many different options out there now. With different gym spaces, you have like CrossFit gyms, you have boutique, high-end fitness studios, you got yoga studios. I've even heard of people subleasing inside like a running store, which is pretty cool. So, yeah, what are some common variables that you see that people should look out for when they're really looking to get into these spaces at the beginning?
I think the first thing is actually the space itself, right? And like imagining the person that you're working with come through that space and how they're going to experience it. So when I was grateful to have a following initially when we started. So like when I was kind of shopping around and figuring out like where should we, park our practice and like, start up shop. We had a lot of different options, but one of them I'll always remember, it was like the sexiest gym ever. Like sexy chandeliers, like dark room, uh the boxing ring in the middle, and like all the weights were like kind of gold. Like it was just like the fucking Louis Vuitton gyms. It was awesome. Like the build out was unbelievable. It was dark. The music was a certain way. Tons of influencers, and I was
Yep.
like, that's not the gym for me, right? 'Cause I love, most a majority of our patients are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, chronic pain, and they're just everyday people and they want to get better. So it's like when they go into a gym like this, they're probably slightly intimidated by the kid that's in the mid 20s doing backflips and shirtless, and
hmm
the physique model that is like, practicing her poses. It's like, I need a space that my potential clients and patients will feel comfortable in. So that's like the first thing I look for. And the reverse side of that, it's like you go into a gym and it's like, let the bodies hit the floor. Let the bodies
Yeah,
hit.
super intense.
Super grungy, super intense, kind of smells like shit. And like, you already know your first purchase is going to be like wall air fresheners. You know what I mean? Like,
For sure.
where were you at when you first started?
Yeah, so I was actually in a pretty dingy CrossFit gym. So while I was in PT school, I was doing a lot of CrossFit. So when I first started out, I knew, hey, like I wanted to work with CrossFitters. So I would say, if people are looking to start out in, cash pay setting and they have or they already have a very specific niche, demographic that they love and they really want to work with, try and see like where do the majority of these people aggregate and congregate at. And so for me, I was already coaching at a CrossFit gym at the time. And, I love CrossFit, understood the movements, got along with everyone that was there. And so for me, being able to kind of set up there, get access to these people, position myself as an expert was kind of like a no-brainer. But I still remember, it was definitely not the greatest gym. There was no air conditioning at the time, and there were no windows inside my room. It was just, super, got a little bit dingy, right? But for me, made it work. So I would say, looking back now, if I could, be a little bit more patient, do my research a little bit more ahead of time, just because at the time there were so many CrossFit gyms, there's so many different people that I could, or so many different gym owners that I probably could have like spoke to first and be able to see, hey, which of these spaces would be maybe a little bit nicer, have some windows and stuff, but still at the same time give me access to the demographic that I wanted to be able to treat as well. Another thing too that I think is pretty important, especially whenever people do have multiple different options for them to set up at, is how long has this gym been in business for? And so most likely the longer the gym that has been in business, more likely that they have, pretty good business acumen. They understand, marketing, sales. They're not going to go out of business, right? They're not going to shut down on you. And then another good metric that I like to look out for is, does this gym have around 200 members or more? that's also a pretty good sign of, hey, okay, this gym's pretty well established. They have a good number of people that are coming in and out. The gyms that only have, maybe like 50 members or so, like they're not doing great. They're like you want to make sure, hey, you have access to a little bit more of a number of people that are already there at that gym, so it kickstarts your practice off a little bit faster, a little bit smoother.
Yeah, I completely agree. I had, we were part of a gym before in the past, like heavily affiliated, where I was like, man, I was talking to the owners and they're like not sure if they were gonna stay afloat. And we've had some friends in a business before that have had to rush their process of building out their own space because the CrossFit gym that they were a part of ended up
End
closing.
up closing, right? Yeah,
So I completely agree. It's a funny thing to reflect on because it's like not something that you'll actually think about. But to your point, like having a significant amount of members, it just shows you that there's something there that's special and people are willing to stick around, right? I think to add on to that, even kind of similar, it's like if they're a successful business, like how good is that communication? Because if you're reaching out to a gym and it takes 2 weeks for a response, and then the follow-up takes another week to respond, it's like, guess what? When you're part of that gym and you've got a frustration or something you want to address, it's going to take a couple of weeks and it's just not going to fix as quickly as you want. So that's another thing I look out for. It's like, just as much as the gym is interviewing them, like you're interviewing them, they're just as much as the gym is interviewing you, you're interviewing them. And there's the professional aspect, the accountability side of things, because while you're not going to be partners per se in business, this is kind of like roommates, right? It's like, do you want
yo,
to
yeah,
leaves dishes in the
100%.
sink all the time when you're trying to cook something. You're like, oh, I gotta wash the dishes now. I get to cook. So I think communication is a big one for me. Like I want to make sure that we're on the same side with or same side of the coin and like thinking about things the same way.
For sure. One thing, and this was something that I realized after we got into our standalone space, but the how high they're charging from a membership is also like a pretty good sign as well too. We've done a couple of events with gyms that they're charging memberships that are anywhere between $50 to $90 for just like open gym access. These events didn't necessarily go as well as some of these gyms that are charging 200 to 200 plus per month for their memberships, right? So I think we can even call it like the rule of 200s, right? Like 200 more than 200 members and then charging at least $200 or more for monthly membership. That's probably a pretty good sign that hey, like this gym has a good group of affluent people who care about their health that are more willing to pay out of pocket for physical therapy services for their health, and then gives you access to a good number of demographic already as well too. Um, what are you thinking from like a rental standpoint? What's kind of the average that you're seeing up in New York whenever people are subleasing inside a gym?
Yeah, typically in New York right now for like a decent space, it's like going to be anywhere from $30 to $40 per session. And that's like if you just pay one session at a time. Kind of buying packs ahead of time, like if you're going to buy like 20 sessions ahead of time, it'll drop it down from like $5 to $10. Some gyms offer like 40 ahead of time. And when you go into like, hey, let's not buy session by session anymore. I just want to see unlimited within a space. That can be anywhere from like 2,800 to like 4,000 is what we've seen. And when you're doing like the 2,800 one, like again, you're not getting the prettiest thing. But when you go to 4,000, you're probably seeing like the cleaner showers, everything is always there. Towels smell like, they belong in a spa kind of move. So
Hmm.
it depends on what you're after and like the type of people that you're trying to attract. Like I do think it makes sense sometimes to pull the trigger on some of those higher end subleases because you get to charge more. Like
Yeah,
if that makes you feel more comfortable from charging like 200 to 250 and you service, 40 people a week. I mean, 40 people a month, even like that's an extra 2,000 in your pocket just from, paying that. So it's like, what's the ROI after that? It's like if you're seeing 40 people a month, you're eventually seeing, like closer to 100, you're feeling more and more confident charging more because you're in a better space. And that's how I think about some of these subleases is like 40 per session is a little bit more, but it's experience that much higher. And if the experience is, you could charge more.
for sure. What did you end up doing initially? Did you do the session by session like package rate, or did you end up pulling the trigger on just hey like a monthly rental lease?
Oh no, I would never go monthly rent or at least right out the gates. I mean, I would never say never, right? I've actually had one person in the mentorship reach out to me and she's like, "Hey, I have this gym that wants me to pay like this amount." And I was like, you know what? That's not a terrible idea because they said right out the gates that they have people that need her help ASAP. And it's a
Hmm.
really well established company. Like, they have Con Ed attached to their gym. They treat some of the like best basketball players, tons of youth athletes. So in that circumstance, it's like, hey, can you potentially bite the bullet for a couple of months? Because all you really need to do is close one or two packages, right? And then it covers the
Hmm.
rent and anything
Yep.
else cherry on top. But I went the route of like we were just paying like 35 per session. Eventually we did like packs of 20. And then once we got closer to like double digits each, we're just like, hey, we're just gonna play flat rate rent. What does that look like? And we went from there.
Yeah. Um, I actually never knew how much that was up in New York. I think this is so funny because we did the exact opposite. So for those of you guys who don't know, Andy's up in New York. I'm down here in Florida, Jacksonville. So when I first started, I went directly into the flat rate, and the reason why was because the flat rate down here in Florida at the time, 2019, was $500 a month.
Jeez.
Right. So it's crazy, right? You're talking about, hey, like 4,000, and you're not even leasing the space out, right? You're doing a sublease inside a gym for 4K versus down here in Florida, right? It's 500. I think if you're in kind of these like higher end cost of living metro areas such as LA, New York City, maybe even like Miami, I think it definitely makes more sense to go to pay the rental per session route. I think if you're more in kind of like a suburbs, the more kind of standard that we'll see is sublease for a space inside a gym is anywhere between as low as 500 all the way up to probably around like 1,500 or even 2,000 per month. I'd say once you're kind of at that like 1,500, 2,000, depending on where you are. All right, I know I think we have a guy inside our group right now. He's in Omaha, Nebraska, and he's looking at sublease spaces right now. And or sorry, he's looking at doing a full build out for a standalone space. And for him, like I think around 1,800, 2,000 square feet is a little bit more than like 2,300 a month. So if you're already, paying close to that amount as a sublease, you might as well make the jump to a full build out at the time. But yeah, I think it's gonna vary crazy by crazy, or it's gonna vary a lot based on the the area that you're at, the location and everything.
Yeah, one thing I forgot to add, it's like the culture aspect of the gym, right? It's like there when you go in a gym, you can palpate the energy in certain areas, right? Is it like up mood or down mood, right? Like there's people that come in, it's like every 8 a.m. session, everyone knows each other. Every 9 a.m. session, everyone knows each other. And that's fucking home field advantage. Like if you got that in the gym and if you've been a part of that culture, you know how important it is because it makes it sticky. Right. It makes you something that it's like an experience that you look forward to. It's like, I don't mind getting out of bed in the morning because I know I'm going to find my people there at 8 a.m. But that it's something I'm always thinking about. It's like, how's the culture on the back end? Sure, it's a great business and it's profitable, but like, are people smiling, right? Or does everyone look worn out? Because if everyone looks worn out, that's not a good energy to be in.
How long did you kind of like research and scout out the places that you were going to be subleasing at before you kind of decided to pull the trigger on one? For me, I ended up just like the first person that said yes, I pulled the trigger on, So, but looking back, I probably should have done a little more research. But yeah, what did you end up doing for a moment?
Pretty much, I was on a vacation, and then I met one of my buddy Ryan, who opened up Soho Strength Lab. He has a partner, Albert, and I met Ryan in 2016. I went to a class, no, 2017. I went to a class that he hosted, and it wasn't necessarily because I knew I wanted to open up a gym, right? It was like I just want to network with other people and build relationships. Ended up keeping in touch with Ryan for a while. So I always knew that that was a potential possibility because when I met him, there was already a physical therapist in there. Then I met Albert like 5 years later, and Albert was like, dude, you're so good at what you do. You're so talented. Just come to our gym and utilize it. We have space for you. So there wasn't in New York, you kind of know all your options. Everyone's like pretty straight out with like what here are what the rates are and stuff. Um, I can go into a space where their main business, right? There's like a gym in New York where their main business is leasing out to other trainers and therapists.
Yep.
can go to a space where their main business is personal training, and then I happen to operate out of that. I think what you're going to find in certain spaces, especially in these metropolitan areas where they build a gym specifically for they build a gym specifically for, this kind of subleasing kind of contracting role, you're gonna have a lot of people with mixed levels of professionalism. I had a
Mm.
patient before that was laying on the ground because we had to use a gym like that when there was a flood in the gym, and we're in this like independent contracting gym. A patient was on the ground, another person just drops a plyo box on the ground, and I'm just like, dude,
Holy shit. Yeah.
like, right, not like directly next to her ear, but like even if it's 5 feet
Yeah, pretty
away,
close.
it's still too much of a thud that like it makes people jump. So I think the level of professionalism varies. But when you went into that CrossFit gym, like, were you like, this is the dream, or like, what? How was that
Bro, I
experience?
I thought I was like on cloud nine, man. I was like, man, like someone's willing to sublease to me. Like, let's go. Like, we're starting it now, you know. But I think it's just, you don't know until you've been exposed to other things, right? Like that are out there. Like, hey, like there are other better potential opportunities out there. But no, for me, I just ended up kind of, the first thing that was first opportunity that was given to me, I ended up pulling the trigger on. And looking back on it, it really wasn't even in that great of a town. It was, all the way off to the west side. Definitely should have picked something a little bit more kind of centrally located. Like for us, our main clinic now is very centrally located in Jackson. We pull people from all over. So I think hindsight 2020. These are kind of the things that we'll look out for. So yeah, let's go. Let's recap real quick for our listeners out there. So yeah, the main things when you're looking for inside a gym, definitely, what is the rapport like between you and the gym owner? Making sure the gym that you're subleasing out of, they've been around for a while. There's good rapport there, good culture there already. And then if you do have different options, right, making sure, hey, there's at least, a good number of members already there, and, charging an appropriate price point from a monthly standpoint. And then if you're in a metro area, definitely going for more of the per session rate, slow build up. So you're not having a super high, crazy overhead at the beginning. But if you do have the opportunity to be in more of a suburb, less highly populated area, looking maybe to go for more of that flat monthly rent of anywhere between 500 to 1500, it's going to be a good place to start because yeah. Anything else that I'm missing from that, Andy, that we want to add to that list?
I think that's it. Yeah, I think there's a lot of things to consider, and that's kind of like the 80/20, right? Like you can always find more reasons, but if you can check those boxes, like you're good to go.
Sweet. All right, guys. Well, hopefully that was helpful. Go out there, implement, and we'll catch y'all on the next episode.
Peace.